Greetings, this is Doc Ock coming at you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central with another installment of Doc Ock at noon and 9. Hope everybody's had a great day today. Seems I didn't get enough rest like I should have, but I do my best, even if I don't get enough rest. Well, you know what time it is. It's 9 o'clock and time to rock. So tonight we're going to continue on with the story of Abraham Hannibal and the Raiders of the Sands. Raiders of the Sands. But before we get started, you know there's a couple things we need to do. Number one, if you have not yet given us a like and you're watching us on Facebook, please do that. If you haven't given us a thumbs up and you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hook us up. Last but not least, spread the word far and wide through the whole land that Black Facts is here making our stand for truth, justice, and the African culture. Meanwhile, let's do our proverb for today. If you are hiding, don't light a fire. Now, if you watch Gunsmoke, you'll understand exactly what that means. Yep. If you're hiding, don't light a fire. Yeah, that should have been an Ethiopian proverb, because we've got foods that you can cook without having to use a fire, right? For when we're out in the field doing battle. But that particular proverb was an Ashanti proverb. So thanks to the Ashanti for that great proverb, wonderful proverb. Meanwhile, let's move on back into our book. We got about halfway through the chapter yesterday called Ethiopia at Home. And we're going to continue on with that chapter, starting off with with our slideshow showing, I believe that's Emperor Teodros, and some of his domesticated lions that he kept around the castle. Because, of course, if you are the conquering lion, you got to have some lions around the palace. There's just no two ways about that. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and do our reading. So we were at a point yesterday where the children made their way to one particular workshop. This is Abraham and his sister Laia. And sitting in the workshop, working on a pair of gold earrings, was a small, round white man. And they called him Yanni. Greetings, Yanni, called the children. Yanni the Greek jumped. Don't do that, children. When I'm deep in my work, it's not good for my heart. Would you like some lemonade? Soon, they were all sitting on Yanni's rich, bright carpets. He always refused to call them Turkish carpets. In his living room, drinking freshly squeezed lemon juice with sugar, something they never had anywhere else. Yanni had lived here nearly all his life and spoke the language well. Abraham had seen 3 or 4 other white men in his time, but Yanni was the only one that he really knew. I can tell you, children, your father's country is a fine one for a Christian. Where I come from, the Turks never give us a moment's peace. New taxes every day, new rules and regulations about what you can and can't wear. Churches all turned into mosques. It was the day a Turkish soldier insulted my sister that I had to leave. I didn't have a weapon at the time, or I'd have had a man's blood on my conscience forever. But I punched him in the face so hard half his teeth fell out. I escaped in a little fishing boat, got all the way to Africa, to Alexandria. Of course, I was younger and fitter then. Abraham tried to avoid meeting Leah's eye. Every time he met Yanni, he'd been told a different version of this very same story, and by now he didn't believe any of them. When Laia couldn't come to town with him, he used to report back to her the version he'd just been told, and they would take turns acting out Yanni, telling the story until they collapsed into giggles, rolling all over the floor. But he was a kind old man and friendly, and they never teased him to his face. At last, they couldn't put off going home any longer. As they crossed the town, a caravan came plodding through from up country, ready to rest for the night. The children could see the great tusks of ivory strapped one on each side of the weary donkeys, the sacks of grain and skins of butter and honey, the locked chest of gold, all on their way to the seacoast and 100 different destinations. In silence, peeking around the corner of a warehouse, Abraham and Laia watched another part of the caravan that was not on donkey back, but was making its own way to the seacoast. About 4 dozen children, a dozen young women, and a few men, their hands chained in front of them, filed into the marketplace and slumped down on the ground to rest. By the look of them, their clothes and their hair and their faces, they came from all different kinds of lands. The merchants, some Arabs and some local men, stood guard with guns, but the slaves didn't look inclined to escape. They just looked bewildered, miserable, and very tired. From the wild lands, mostly, I think, whispered Laia. Maybe some of them speak our secret language. In the language of the Kunama, the children whispered greetings to the slaves, and some of the limp figures raised their heads in curiosity, but it was no use. One of the guards heard them too, and was next to them in a few quick strides, beating them away with the barrel of his musket and screaming, "What? Scat! Get lost, kids, unless you'd like to join your brothers and sisters on the trip." The children fled and didn't stop till they were halfway up St. Mary's Hill. That really was scary, panted Laia. I think he meant it, don't you? I think so, gasped Abraham in reply. But the other Arabs earlier on were so friendly, and so are the Arabs in town. Well, we have been warned before, said Laia. As Granny Esther says, mind how you go and mind out for kidnappers. Just because someone's a Christian or even a child of a chief doesn't mean they can't be kidnapped. Anyone can end up a slave. It was a relief to get back to the depressing atmosphere of the royal compound. And later that night, after Abraham and his sister had settled themselves for sleep on their cow skins on the hut floor, he heard her softly call him, "Abraham." "Yes?" "Have you ever thought that if father hadn't loved mother so much, she'd have been sold just like those slave people today? She could have been marched off to the sea in a caravan just like that. And so would we. There wouldn't have been any us, silly. We would never have been born." Think about that. Abraham thought about it for a moment. It was a disturbing idea. "I'm glad you were born, Laia. I like having you for a sister." Laia laughed. "Yes, you are lucky, aren't you? But then I'm lucky too." Journey to the Emperor, Chapter 9, December 1702. Then the bustle of the town seemed to spread even to the palace on the hill. Servants were up and down to the markets and warehouses 5 times a day. The Lord of the Sea was around more than usual and strode around giving orders for packing and loading, and a new corral was built outside the yard wall. Young horses were brought in from the countryside every evening and stabled in the corral every night. Every night there were more of them. One evening, Pharez called Abraham to his palace. The Lord of the Sea sat cross-legged on his throne. The boy squatted at his feet. So, little monk, let's see what you know of the business of ruling. What do you make of all the preparations here these days? Asked Pharez. Abraham frowned. Are you taking presents to the emperor in Gondar, like last year, father? Pharez smiled. In a way, it's the time of the yearly tribute. Each year, the great lords of the empire have to pay part of our wealth to the emperor, and I am one of the wealthiest. Do you know why? Abraham shook his head. Every grain of food, every ounce of ivory or gold that leaves Ethiopia by sea has to go through my domain on its way to the seaport of Massawa. So does every luxury foreign article, every gun, every bead and bottle that is brought into the empire through the port. The merchants pay me a tax on all the goods going in or out. Apart from the taxes, the farmers pay me on their crops. This is the chief source of my wealth. And every year, the emperor takes his share of all those proceeds. Here, our tribute is mostly horses, guns, and rich cloth. I leave in 2 days' time for Gondar to present my tribute. A thought that had long puzzled Abraham came back to him. Father, might I ask you a question? Does Massawa belong to you? Why do you ask? Well, you're called the Lord of the Sea, and so I think the sea and the coast and the ports ought to belong to you. I think the emperor and I would agree with you, little monk. Well, once upon a time, they did belong to the Lord of the Sea and his emperor. But the Turks came in their ships from far away. They had guns, and we did not. And they took the seacoast away from us, so that now it belongs to their sultan. The name of the lords of the sea never changed, because one day, perhaps, we shall be lords of the sea again. But enough of the old days. How would you like to come to Gondar with me? Abraham's eyes and mouth grew wide. More than anything else in the world, Father. It's settled then. Of course, there was the dark side. There was no question of Leah being allowed to go. And Abraham had to say goodbye to his mother too, and Granny Esther, and to Nimrod. He and Leah sat in a shady corner of the hot courtyard where Nimrod lay dozing at the end of his chain, each of them rubbing one of his big, soft, furry ears. You will look after him, won't you, Leah? He will be grown up, fat, and happy when you come back, and very fierce. Not towards me, never. He'll remember me. The day Abraham set off, before first light, Leah and Makeda didn't come down to the town to see him off. They hugged each other goodbye without a word inside the dark hut so that no one would see their tears. Then his sister and mother made their way to the yard wall where it towered high above the track that led inland. They climbed up and sat with their arms around each other, watching the long caravan toiling south until the last donkey was out of sight and the sun blazed fiercely through the thin air of high Ethiopia. So when they say high Ethiopia, the Ethiopian highlands are around the 5,000 foot or 5,000 meter level. So they're pretty high up there. Well, 5,000 feet and 5,000 meters, two different things. I'd have to look that up. I'm thinking 5,000 feet, but I'm not sure if they were measured in feet or meters. So you all can check those stats for me if you would. And meanwhile, we're going to pause there, and we'll be back tomorrow night to read some more about Abraham Anabal and the Raiders of the Sands. Now, earlier today, I I read about I read more about the Queen of Sheba and her only son Menelik, and I let people know that have been listening, our regular audience. I let them know that I've decided to continue reading the story of the Queen of Sheba tomorrow at noon and on through into next week until we finally finish the story of the Queen of Sheba and her only son Menelik. And the reason being because it's such an important story in the um, Ethiopian folklore. Okay, it's the basis of the not only the kingship, but it's the basis of the 3,000 year Solomonic dynasty. When we say that Haile Selassie was his imperial majesty, Lord of Lords, King of Kings, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah of the 3,000 year Solomonic dynasty of Ethiopia, that's a whole story, where actually it's about 4 or 5 stories that are all bound up in those titles. And so we want to make sure that everyone is aware of how those stories relate to Emperor Haile Selassie in particular, but to all the other emperors that came before him and the ones that will surely come after him, because the dynasty, that line, that genealogical line still exists, and so the emperorship could return at some point in the future if people see the need to bring the emperor back and put the emperor back on the throne. We'll see what happens. Stranger things have happened in history. Meanwhile, all you liquor ones out there know what time it is. You know what you need to be doing right about now. You need to put your liquor head on your liquor pillow, on your liquor bed, close those eyes, and wait on that sun to rise. And when those sunbeams, when you feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, you know that it's time for you to rise and shine, oh children of mine. So get your rest, be ready for a new day, because when the dawn of the new day breaks, it's going to be another divine day, and you need to be ready with all your energy and all your strength to greet that day, and shake it by the nape of the neck if you need to, because the day is yours. Greet it as such. In the meanwhile, all you adults out there, we'd like you to do a couple things. We already asked you to give us a like if you're watching on Facebook, and a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. But we'd also like you to go ahead and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel so you can see the slideshows that we've been producing that go along with our stories. If you you're not want to subscribe, you can always watch the recorded version that we post up on Facebook. So we do that right after we finish with our live streams. Meanwhile, peace out without a doubt, with justice, of course, because anything less is a horse of a different color, and we don't like horses of a different color. We like our horses either black, white, or piebald. Yeah, look that one up, a piebald horse. See what you find on that tip. And in the meanwhile, we'll just give a shout out to Janice Taylor and Michael Hodges. And I don't see anybody else out there giving us a wave, but we'll go ahead and give them the greeting and go into our extra. Peace out, y'all.